replies down here. So, what do you think? What do you think the universe is? Why do you think anything exists in the first place?
Wow. Hey, Flumpy, nice job of jumping in with both feet. Welcome to the ranks of the V-bloggers. You were my fourth subscriber, and I know you said you didn't have a good enough camera to start V-blogging, but I see you've finally started, and you've certainly managed to ask the big question, which of course I can't answer. I just wanted to give you a reply, and as the light of day is beginning to arrive. It's 7:18 here in Bobland, and I'm about to go to bed. But let me see. What am I trying to do here? Give you a response to what is the universe and why is the universe? Well, I also see that Fantastic Babblings has already answered back to say that it's everything there is, even if it's just a dream, and that pretty much covers it, doesn't it? But I think that the universe, which includes everything, obviously then can't be described except in comparison to something that's outside the universe, i.e. supernatural, and anything that, in my mind anyway, anything that is outside the universe would be part of the universe, because by definition the universe is everything. So to say what the universe is, you can only compare it to parts of itself, and this is really inadequate, and it certainly begins to explain why the question is so hard to answer. But what it doesn't explain is why I think you and I certainly, and I think most people, have some idea of the universe. What is that idea that we have? There was a famous theologian whose name escapes me right now, who, actually I think it was maybe one of the major ones, like Augustine or something, who, when asked what time was, said, "I know what time is, but when you ask me, I don't." And I think the universe is a little bit like that. I think we all know what the universe is, but when you ask us, we don't. And I also think that the universe is a little bit like self-consciousness. We're all self-conscious. We all, not in the sense of being shy or embarrassed, but in the sense of being aware that we are aware, which is a paradox in itself. Who is aware? Who is it that is self-aware? Who is the self that is aware of the other self? I actually have loads to say about the nature of consciousness, or loads to theorize about that, and I really am not up to it right now. But I do think there's this test that psychologists or biologists or somebody have come up with, called the mirror test. to test the level of self-consciousness in animals. It's basically, can an animal recognize itself in a mirror, or will it think it's either not be able to recognize it as anything or think it's another animal? And they've come up with various tests to do this, like sneak up on a chimp while it's sleeping and draw a little mark on its face, and then watch very carefully when the chimp wakes up and looks into a mirror, and if its hand immediately goes to the unfamiliar dot, then they know, my God, it knows its own face. And apparently a chimp passed this test in the early 70s, and it was quite a big deal. But I think in terms of knowing oneself, I think there's some sort of analogy to knowing the universe. Long, long ago, there were no mirrors, and we were animals, and we were evolving into the much grander animals that we are now, much more full of ourselves animals. And self-consciousness was a big part of that, and I can imagine the experience of a person who sees all these other animals around it and functions in relation to them, but does not really understand that it is also one of those animals that is around it. Except that animal, that person would see their hands and note that those hands are like the hands of those other animals, and blah, 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 blah. You can see where this is going. You see your shadow. Gee, I'm casting a shadow like those other animals cast a shadow. You look into the rippling water. Oh, there's a reflection. Then the mirror arrives. And by a 2001-esque Kubrickian ellipse, we go straight from that to YouTube, in which we get to watch ourselves being watched by other people who we in turn are watching on a planetary scale. And God knows how much more mediation is possible in terms of appreciating ourselves from all these simulated and manufactured perspectives that human consciousness of the past simply didn't have. I mean, we live in a world where we're familiar with slow motion and reverse motion and for that matter, still motion, things that never existed before photography and motion picture photography. It's endlessly fascinating to me. I'm digressing all over the place here now. It's endlessly fascinating to me that painters in the distant past were able to freeze action, because clearly a person can stand still for you, and a dead animal can lie there, and you can draw a picture of it. But how did people paint waves before photography? And the answer is, most of the time, not very well. Waves were quite stylized before you were able to freeze them mechanically with photography. And I think to justify me even bringing this up, it's an example of how the modern sense of what the world is so wrapped up in our technology for recording it and examining it. And YouTube is another example of that. It's a way of looking at humanity, looking at all of us that didn't exist before. Things like it existed, but there was never a situation in which that big crowd of people in the background of important scenes in newsreels in the past where that background crowd could bring themselves into the close-up and express themselves and show how much alike so many of them are, and yet how different in very subtle ways that get lost in the big picture, in the crowd scene. But to come back to your question, in the sense that I think human consciousness is changing with the tools that we have to look at ourselves. I wonder if we might not be on the verge of technology that would really change our understanding of or our ability to answer the question, what is the universe? On the face of it, it seems impossible to really state that any more than anyone in the history of humanity has ever really said what is self-consciousness. We have shorthand for it, and we experience it, but when you ask us what we're experiencing, it's impossible to put into words, and it's impossible to know what is known. Oh boy, I'm really choking on this, aren't I? I thought for sure I was going to be able to go where no human philosopher had ever gone before, but I guess this is not the morning for it.